Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Ask the Expert. I am here and excited to share this topic. It is really going to be more of a conversation, and part of the reason why it's a conversation is because it's my own personal journey, walking through working with um, let me it would be helpful if you all saw the person that's talking, right? Hide my photo in the background. I'm like, I can't see myself. So it's yours truly, Dr. G, doing the topic today on the Ask the Expert. And the Ask Expert is N of one. N of one means that personal experience walking the journey of health and diet. You are where you eat. And so this is going to be part of the conversation that I want to share today. So I will say this, that I am I should really say I'm a parent. I am a parent, rather. I'm a parent pharmacist and an individual committed to passionate, and I'm committed to being passionate about people and living a healthy life in a healthy body. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a nutrition and I'm not a dietitian. And I would say take this advice with a pinch of salt. So I am a parent and I'm talking from it from a parent perspective. So that's my disclaimer for this afternoon. I am a parent, pharmacist, an individual committed to being people being able to live a healthy lifestyle. At the end of this session, I hope that we will come to understand how food affects energy, mood, and focus. I also want to review the diet, specific consideration to specific special needs individuals, and I will say specific healthcare needs. Want to learn some realistic, family-friendly nutritional strategies, and then I want to challenge you to identify one small change to try this week. Just one small piece that you want to try this week. All right. Um, and so I want to just say this to you, all of us who are listening in. When it comes to diets, there's been many fads, and we will honestly say there's no one size fit all. And I also want to say this that the reason why I chose this particular topic to do is because when I started on this journey with families and even with my own child, I recognized that there are certain issues that were popping up that I didn't understand why it was happening. And I will use the illustration with Nick and even with my other children and even with myself. And recognizing that after certain meals, I was not feeling 100%. So started to explore and in the journey of the autism spectrum, I come to learn more about diets and the different diets and what people are doing. And the expectation was that if you try a particular diet, perhaps your child will quote unquote recover. So you hear people who are on this pathway of wanting to go on a particular diet or try a particular diet. And I'll focus on one particular one and I'll tell you more as we talk and recognizes that a dietary intervention is just part of the support for an individual. And then, so the other piece to also note is that what works for one person may not work for another, right? What works for one person may not work for another. And what my most important key message here is a balanced diet and a healthy body is key. Balanced diet. And I've also recognized that how you're maybe eating today over time as your body changes, we may have to adjust what we're eating and how much of it we're eating. So, and I will be the first to say that that's happening to me right now. So what does it mean when people say you are where you eat? What does that mean? What does you are where you eat mean? So we know if you look at healthcare and most of the health conditions that you go to see a doctor about, the first thing that they will tell you is look at your diet, dietary interventions. So if you think about diabetes, you think about high blood pressure, which are the common ones in adults that we'll see. They will tell you that what are you eating? So that means that there's something in the food that may be contributing to a problem in your body, or changing certain things will enhance or improve your health, right? So that means that food is more than calories. It's more than just counting calories. Food is information for the body. It serves as a fuel for the body. It serves as a building block for the brain. Food influences energy. You eat certain foods, afterwards you may feel very energetic. I will be disclaimer, I drink coffee 1 cup a day, 1 cup. And in a way, maybe it's some level of psychological thing, right? Because it does makes me feel more energetic. And honestly, I can drink coffee at night and not affect me at all. Somebody else can drink coffee and they'll get wired. For some people, some people will have certain beverages that they preference. But the point here is that it's an intake of a chemical through, right, caffeine. And it does impact the mood and also the behavior. We'll talk about children and some of the foods that or the drinks that they may be exposed to that impacts their behavior right away. And it also affects sleep. I talked about caffeine not affecting my sleep, but some people they drink caffeine, it affects their sleep, can't sleep, be wired on all night. So that means that what's coming in the beverage that's coming in is going to have an impact. And it also has an effect on your immune system. So we are what we eat. Clearly, it's very important that you think about the food groups that you're eating and realizing that it does help you. It does have a detrimental effect, meaning that it can have a bad outcome, or it could have a good outcome. So you see this little picture, very nice, very colorful. And that's what your nutritionist will tell you. You want your plate to look like that. Right. So nutrition matters in individuals with special healthcare needs. We know many of our individuals with special needs experience sensory sensitivities and processes differences. And sometimes this what you and I and some of us may eat and be okay with, some of them cannot. A lot of our kids have textural issues, and we afterwards they may have what we call GI or gastrointestinal or digestive challenges, constipation, reflux, and bloating. We know that almost 50% of individuals who have been diagnosed with the autism spectrum end up having some GI related issue, one point or the other. Not all of them do, but there's certain foods that are irritating or can aggravate their GI tract. And so for that reason, or gastrointestinal tract, so that reasons, we have to be more attentive and in tune to the food that is eating. And I have to say that if you start to see that your sleep patterns are changing, and whenever I do this type of talk, I always do it in a context that is not just about people with special needs, but all of us too. Pay attention to if your GI tract is changing, things are happening, like you're seeing you're more constipated and I apologize if you're getting close to eating and so on and so forth. There may be some things you just need to pay attention to. Sometimes individuals may have food intolerances and allergies, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Some of them have restricted food preferences. They will only eat a certain type of food. They will only sometimes it's even the color of the food. They are very particular about the food, the texture, the temperature. And so that's saying a lot about that individual. And then oftentimes people just, oh, that's their autism. No, that means that they're sensitive, and we just need to be mindful about that. Certain medications may have side effects that would affect the appetite or even the nutrients. And so the take-home message is that nutrition can help support overall regulation of healthcare, our health, and regulate our body and also our well-being. So it's really important to know that. We also need to know something about a lot of times people hear something called the leaky gut syndrome. The gut and the brain have a connection. What goes into your stomach affects what happens in your brain. Very, very, very important. So the gut and the brain communicate constantly. The food will impact your gut. And how healthy your gut is also going to translate in how healthy your brain is. So if your stomach is how you have an irritable bowel disease, meaning that anytime you eat, you end up having some people will eat and they're like, okay, where's the closest bathroom? Because certain food just go right through. If that's happening, that means your gut is leaky. It may have issues there. And that then in translate and not feeling very good. You just feel overwhelmed or tired. You look at what's on your plate. Look out, you may have to start to do a food diary to get a sense of, okay, after I eat, I'm noticing my behavior is this way or the gut is this way. So anytime we are I'm talking to a new parent, I always say, okay, in addition to getting ABA, applied behavioral analysis, or getting speech support, or getting occupational therapy support, or getting whatever other supports you are, let's also talk about what's happening with the individual. How are they sleeping? How are they eating? What is their bowel habits? It tells you a lot because the gut tells you what's going on in the brain as well. It also affects the blood sugar. amount of carbs you're eating does have that. And if you ingest a lot of that, you can have a spacey, what I call spacey period where you just like feel very, very, very tired. Have you noticed you eat certain foods after this, you just want to sleep, right? So it does impact behavior. And it also certain foods can be irritating and it can induce certain chemicals in the body to release inflammation and cause inflammation. And if there's a lot of inflammation, it will also affect the mood and ability to focus. So parents may be spending lots of money or getting a tutor, doing it, and all these great things for your kid to try to do for the individual to do better. But it may very well just be as something as simple as the food that they're eating. So it's really important to know that blood sugar swings can impact irritability, can make you fatigue, can make you hyperactive, and it make you emotionally irregular. So emotional regulation is very, very important. So individuals or kids that have ADHD, deficit hyperactivity disorder, we need to pay attention to what is the food, what are they eating, and another important point is regular meals and balanced snacks can help stabilize the system. Really, really, really important. So some of blood sugar basics is remember when meals are skipped or they're sugar heavy, energy levels go up and down and it will spike and crash. The mood will change and they'll have reduced focus. So I'm a big believer in not loading up with like cereal and look at the box of cereal and how much sugar in it. A lot of times parents, for the sake of convenience, will get cereal and milk for their kids in the morning with no protein at all. And then all of a sudden the child goes to school, you start to see that they're not able to attend, they're not able to be focused, they're not able to sit. And that's because of what we're feeding them. And so it's really important. So balanced meal will include protein, fiber-rich carbohydrates, and healthy fats. So, so, so important. So even as adults, we ourselves need to be mindful about these things in there. And I will say it, and throughout the talk, I'll refer you back to if your child has a healthcare need, if it have some level of diagnosis of some sort, please consult a dietitian and nutritionist, really as part of the workup because they might be able to give you insights on some of the things that is there. But most of the time, parents don't even think about the consideration for this, and that's the reason why I'm doing this topic today. So some of the core nutritional foundation is to make sure that you add protein. So what does that look like? Egg, yogurt, beans, fish, poultry. Poultry means chicken. And I have to tell you that most of these things, protein is gluten-free, casein-free. Most for the most part. And the reason why I highlight that is because these days you go to the grocery store and the chicken that is in the fridge they put gluten-free on there. Of course, it's gluten-free. It's protein. Um, we also want whole grain and fiber. You want fruits and vegetables of any form. You want healthy fats, so olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, and you want adequate hydration. This is if you don't get anything at all from the presentation I'm doing today, this slide is very important. It's just saying this is foundational. And once again, my disclaimer is I am not a nutritionist. I did consult a nutritionist. I actually wanted a nutritionist to do this topic today, but today is Super Bowl Sunday, so it's a little tricky. But with the knowledge that I have as a pharmacist and the knowledge as I have even in consultation with a nutritionist, these are the key foundations that they want us to be able to highlight on. And throughout and in the talk, I'll share a little bit about my our own personal journey in ways. There was a time that I learned that some of one of my children, I won't mention any names and they get mad at me for always referring to them in my presentations, but I came to a place where I realized that the food that they were eating was having an issue in their ability to attend. And this is my neurotypical kids. And so I got to a stage where I was like, no cereal in the morning. I know it was a little draconian and a little extreme. And I got into this kick that, okay, you're going to eat egg every day. To the point where one of my kids are like, I don't even want to see boiled egg anymore. I don't want to see eggs anymore. But it was important to make sure that there was a balanced diet, you know? They're eating well and vegetables. And then so you say, okay, my kid does not want to eat these things. Okay, we'll talk about that. And so hold that question for me. Adequate hydration, water, water, water. Find ways to get in water a day. So some of the diet specific consideration, especially if your child is diagnosed with autism, is that we understand that there are common nutritional related challenges. A lot of them have limited food variety. They don't want to try a lot of things. There was a time my son only wanted to eat fries. Fries. So by the food category alone, there's no protein in that. There's fat by just frying it. But the reality is we needed to get past that. And we also went through a season where he has a significant gastrointestinal distress. I'll talk about that in a bit. The texture and sensory, he was not gonna eat yogurt. We're like it's smooth and it just the color of it, all of that was not attractive. But there were some GI issues. And this is where if you're eating, I apologize, he will eat and will see the food particles in the stool. Your body is supposed to be able to, with enzymes in your body, to digest the food so that it does not show up in the stool. If you're looking at a child's stool and you're seeing food particles, that is not normal. And it requires you to seek a GI doctor right away. If they're straining and when they go to the bathroom and yet it is the stool is watery, that calls for a GI, what we say GI consult right away. So you need to make sure that they're seeing a doctor for that. It's not normal. That is not the autism. That is not normal. Don't ignore it because there are things going on in the body that must be addressed immediately. That's how I got on this diet kick because of that. That was what was happening in my home. So dietary changes may help some individuals, but not all. And then the effect may vary. So it's important to note that what I said earlier, 50% of some of these kids, maybe because they may be nonverbal, because they can't tell you how they're feeling, this is maybe how it's showing up. And so it requires you to just pay closer attention to the food. So some of the diets that we know in the autism spectrum world, and this data I pulled from the Autism Research Institute, they had done some parent reporting survey. And what they noted for parents who took on a diet called gluten-free, casein-free, I'll touch on that one a little bit more because more parents are familiar with that. Where there's no gluten, that means wheat, rye, barley, and come out all casein is free of that. So it's not meaning that it's free. It means that it's free of those things. Any food that is free of the wheat, rye, barley, and so on and so forth. When parents went on that type of diet with their children, the children they saw improvement in certain symptoms. And we'll talk a little bit about what kind of symptoms they are. So 65% of them said they saw improvement when they just took out only dairy, right? 50% of them proved when it's just no wheat, 49% improvement, but the combination was 65%. Sometimes parents may also go on something called the food sensitivity elimination, eliminating all the other food sensitivities, soy, corn, eggs, citrus, peanut, chocolate, cane. Now they can do testing to see if the individual is what we call allergic versus intolerant. Those are a lot of times here when we're looking at these diets, it's more of an intolerance issue than it is an allergic issue. So it's very important that people know that person who has a true allergy, for example, to gluten, maybe who we call the celiac-like type of issue. So not like that, but they may be sensitive to that, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So when there's no eggs, no chocolate, no sugar, when you do rotational diet, some parents have noted improvement. There is something called Feingold diet, low phenols. It restricts foods that are high in phenolic foods, including artificial ingredients and high salicylic fruits. It's beyond the scope of this conversation, but some things as in examples like even eating grapes, certain berries are all may have high phenols in it. So you just want to be able to restrict that more. There's something also called specific carbohydrate diet or GAPS diet. They restrict carbohydrate to fruits, non-starchy vegetables, and honey. These are a little bit more challenging. That's why I say that you might want to consult a dietitian. There's something called body ecology diet, which is more of an anti-yeast, combining anti-yeast diets with no sugar, acid, alkaline fermented foods. So they have the Western A price really going towards the good quality fats, soaking and fermenting for digestion purposes. And then really low oxalate diet is restricting the higher oxalates. So some of these diets have been shown to help, but most parents start at the basic diet level of gluten-free, casein-free. So overall, the key thing is to maintain perspective, right? So the potential for the GFCF diet is that it will help with GI support predominantly, which is one of the reasons why we went on that diet with Nick, and he's still on that diet. Sometimes because of the type of nutritional restrictions you have, you may see in nutritional nutrients gaps in nutrients. So some people go on the ketogenic diet, especially if the individual has seizure disorder. It's really not for general use. Some people go on vegan, more of an ethical choice. It requires planning, going in advance and thinking about that. The paleo diet, more like being whole food focused and may restrict carbs. And then there's some people that go on an anti-inflammatory diet, really restricting the amount of food that tends to be irritating into the gut and therefore reducing the inflammation. This tends to be more sustainable. So overall, what parents had reported is that when they went on some of these diet, gastrointestinal problems relief. 100% for Nicholas, that's what we saw. I mean, when I tell you that we saw more improved attention, and so the diarrhea and constipation lessened for him. We saw that he was more attentive. Receptive language came in because before there was no receptive language, didn't really understand, no expressive language, but we started to see that he was understanding, learning, and growing. So it's one of those things that parents would not need to pay attention to. Like, are we seeing changes when we try these things? So greater focus, greater attention, reduce hyperactivity, eye contact, more appropriate behavior, better sleeping, easier toileting. I've seen her parents that said a child was not toilet trained, went on some of these dietary, meaning that I paid attention to a healthier food. They started to see that toilet training. And amazingly, skin rashes and eczema cleared up. So if you remember, the skin is also a tool, an organ. Actually, skin is an organ for detoxification, getting rid of toxins out of the body. Some of these foods can really be irritating, and the body's way of expressing that something is happening is that you start to see eczema and rashes, and you start to see these children improve. So overall, you see a general health and happiness improvement. So that's what some parents report. And that may be the reason why you want to explore it. So the goal here is that if for our children, it's also equally important to look at what's going in the body as much as in terms of from a food standpoint, beyond just doing supplements. And that's one of the things that parents do. So whenever I've done this talk, I've done it what we call biomedical approaches to autism disorders. And I talk about some of the science behind why we do it. But I wanted to focus more on the diet aspect to more of a holistic concept that is really, really important that we're eating well as individuals, right? So so that what I want you to think about is instead of just restricting food or a strict elimination, we want to optimize. We want to enhance nutrition within preferred foods. So you want to ensure that the food you're making sure that individuals having exposed to protein, have iron, they're getting zinc, the omega oils and fats in fish, and flax and chia are all there. And they address the constipation. And then, like I said, fluids, hydration, water. You're like, my child doesn't drink water. We got to get creative on how we can get in fluids in the body because that's so, so important. The gut is crucial. That's one of the biggest organ. Very, very important because the gut holds or houses the immune system. And the immune system is very, very, very important in preventing a lot of illnesses and diseases. So crucial that we understand that. We also want to think about even some kids have an overlap of ADHD and attention hyperactive disorder. Um, so nutrition strategies with the greatest support have been seen, right? What is important, I used the example of my own children and making sure they got protein in the morning. So protein at breakfast, so important before they go to school. Regular meals and snacks and spacing it out, right? And omega fatty acid may really support attention. So, and then remember, excess sugar may worsen and symptoms in some individuals. So if you have children that have a hyperactivity disorder, I really, really want to encourage you something simple as just really beginning to give them some protein. And you might have to get creative on how you get the protein in the body. We did juicing for that just to make sure that he got in chicken. So I found for Nicholas, on the other hand, we juiced his meals. And that's how we gave it to him. And it was almost like giving it to him like medicine. And I saw such an improvement. When he went to school, the speech therapist was like, you know what? He was able to attend. So really, really, really important that we take that into consideration. So what's some of the example? Make sure you give eggs and toast. You do Greek yogurt and fruit berries, nut butter and apple slices, crackers and cheese. So it sounds like maybe a lot, but think about it as a journey and start one at a time. The goal there is to prevent blood sugar crashes because if you just the child is just eating cereal, they look at the content amount of sugar that's in the cereal. That is what's going to cause sugar high, and then they crash, and then it's just like they can't focus. It's not their fault, and they were like, okay, let's put them on medication. Before we get to the medication, let's look at the diet, please. Right? So the key here is understanding the sensory discomfort is real, and it's not just behavioral resistance, especially with individuals with sensory processing disorder and how food impacts it. So let's look at predictable mealtime routines. You know, sometimes it's same food, but different forms. You're gonna, expose them without pressuring them. And then we want to bridge this process. So some individuals are really averse, maybe the soft food. So let's start with crispy and then go down to crunchy and then eventually to soft. And then we can think about doing smoothies as a nutritional bridges. So I talked about us just juicing, and then when we juice it, and I have a slide that's coming up on juicing, we actually put protein in it, and then we put fruits in it, and then we put vegetables in it, and then we made it. And then it was a little sweetened with honey, and he got used to it, and so I gave that to him in the morning, and he went off to school. If he didn't eat, it was fine because at least that is making sure that the nutrition is in that way. And if the child had GI issues and food sensitivities, and it will show up in the form of constipation, as I mentioned earlier, they might have reflux, gas, and bloating. We saw that real life with my own child. And I just thank God today that these are not issues any longer. Why? Because we were able to address it from a food standpoint. We had to address it initially with medication to reduce the inflammation because right after a meal you just saw that the behaviors were high, and that's because the gut was really impaired. But these are things that have healed, and I'm so grateful because of what we did about it. And it's the basics of food. So what can we do? Increase the fluids. So I would say this here that if your child, look at, are you giving them juice and they're liking a lot of juice? Start to dilute the juice and make it more like watery, right? Slowly. Think about taking the juice, diluting it, and turning it into an ice popsicle, for example. Gradual fiber increase, right? Eat probiotic rich foods whenever possible. We really, really, really want to decrease what we call dysbiosis. So dysbiosis is when the gut gut flora is in disrepair. You have bad yeast that override the good yeast. Have you ever noticed if the doctor puts your child on antibiotic, certain antibiotics will have them end up getting diarrhea, even as an adult. Why? Because it causes dysbiosis. So you definitely want to bring in, and that's the reason why they'll say eat yogurt, or you want to be on probiotics, which I'll talk a little bit about. You want to track symptoms with the food logs. I talked about that earlier. It's really, really, really important to match behaviors with the food. So I want to encourage you for 1 week. Start to pay attention. Start doing a diary and see what happens. So let's talk a little bit about allergies versus an intolerance. So an allergy is an immune response, and it just becomes the body's response and saying, I don't like this food. And the person can really go into an attack, right? Where their respiration could be impaired so that they will probably really need an EpiPen. That's different. So that requires a strict avoidance. And so some children have peanut allergies, and that's what that may be, you know? That's different from an intolerance. Intolerance is that's where even sometimes some people will have lactose intolerance. All of a sudden, they eat dairy and they're in the bathroom. And they can go for 3 or 4 days like that. That's an intolerance. That means that the GI system is saying, I don't like this. I don't like this food you're giving me. All these cheeses that you want to eat and enjoy, you eat it and afterwards you're in the bathroom. And over time, it will not just impair, it will not only have the effect on the gastrointestinal tract, it does affect your ability to concentrate and make decisions. You see that sometimes like you're trying to really, really focus on some task and you're having trouble. look at what you just ate in the last 24 hours. So it may mean avoiding an entire food groups casually, but I mean, avoid entire food groups casually, but really look to see how gradual you can do it. And so nutrient replacement matters, right? When you are avoiding or taking some foods out in that way, because food is where we get nutrition, we get nutrients and vitamins and minerals. And those are, energy food for our body. And so it's really, really, really important that when we're taking some of these, we're going on these elimination quote unquote diets, that we understand that. And so I highly really would say work with a nutritionist if you're going to go on any diets. Talk to your doctor if you're doing it, because you don't understand what can impact, how it can impact the body. And so that was something that we did safely in our case. So let's take a closer look at the GFCF diet. This is what we did. Um, and I mentioned to you, for us and for a lot of parents that I've talked to, they saw an improvement. So if you're having a GI distress, it might be something to consider. So who are the possible candidates for this based on clinical experience and parental reports? If the individual is craving for milk-based products such as milk, ice cream, cheese, you notice that they're picky eaters. You notice that they have constipation or diarrhea. There's certain behaviors, poor focus, poor eye contact, spacey, silly, obsessive compulsive. They're not very tolerant to pain. And then repetitive behavior and self-injurious. That may be signs that something is happening in the gut and they're being sensitive or intolerant. So I'll use the word sensitivity or intolerance to certain foods, and including gluten or casein. So casein is usually found in milk, in yogurt, they're in cheese, it's ice cream, sherbet, butter, buttermilk. So if you're going to say, I'm going to try this diet, understand that you're going to have to look at food and what you're going to read labels, in other words, right? And so you might need to think about substituting the milk that you drink. So in place of your, what I call cow milk, you may have to do rice milk, eat coconut, potato, almond. So basically you're taking grains, and the water from it can now become a source of milk substitute. You can do oil or coconut. So sometimes you may need this milk in making certain foods, right? You're baking and you need milk. So you're now going to think about replacing. The child may not be able to eat ice cream. And even if you're an adult and you have sensitivity to dairy or casein, you might go the route of just using sorbets, fruit popsicle, Italian ice, and so on and so forth. So the point here is that you look at what you're sensitive to and thinking about substituting it in place of that. So one important note is that we need calcium and we need vitamin D. And when we take away some of these foods, you're going to essentially be eliminating these things, vitamin calcium from your food, and you need it for bone formation and so many reasons. So we need fortified. We need to be able to replace it. So fortified meals like rice milk, coconut milk, hemp, or almond will have calcium in it. You may want to also provide the individual or yourself as an adult food rich in calcium, so salmon, sardines, tofu, green leaves, and broccoli. And a calcium supplement is maybe necessary because it's important to take calcium. And calcium also requires magnesium for it to be effective, and obviously vitamin D. A lot of our kids are vitamin D deficient, and so it's really, really, really important that if you're a parent and you're doing this diet, you should not be doing by yourself, and you should be seeking a physician or your medical professional's counsel. Really, really, really important. What is gluten? Gluten is protein found in wheat, rye, barley, oats, and seminola. We find gluten in breads, pasta, noodles, spaghetti, cereal, and cereal grains. I talked about that earlier. They make gluten-free ones, right? So because they are alternate. So remember, if a product is labeled as wheat-free, it does not necessarily mean it's gluten-free. So gluten is a protein. So remember, it's a it's a protein, but not meat proteins. That's why I want to clarify that, because somebody may be confused, like, oh, gluten is a protein. It's meaning that from how it's harvested. That's what that is. When it's broken down, is the gluten in wheat, right? So gluten can also be found as additives and as artificial and food coloring. It may be in soy sauces, It may be hydrolyzed plant and vegetable protein. It's in malt. It could be your citric acid. It could also be in Play-Doh. Um, so it's important that if your child is playing with Play-Doh and you know that they're sensitive or intolerant to gluten, that you pay attention. And I will say this, that some of these individuals, we don't know what started it, why they're sensitive to gluten, why they're sensitive to casein, but we know that there may be environmental toxins that may have contributed to it. That I suspect for us, that may be one of the reasons because when my son is exposed to gluten or casein, he is a different animal. He's a different person. So we know that sensitivity is that. Some of us have, certain type of dairy things that we drink, and then all of a sudden you're like, I want to see the bathroom. We don't want that. So what are some of the common substitutes that you can get for gluten? You can do corn. I will warn that sometimes some individuals are sensitive to corn also. You can do chickpea, right? Nut flours, potato is fine. Potato flour, starches, rice is fine. Tapioca or sorghum. So they're alternates, so that's why the child can eat potato. They can have French fries. If they're going to do French fries for, say, from McDonald's, you have to make sure that they don't fry it in the same oil as the some other wheat containing thing. And sometimes there's also like seasoning that people may put on the fries that may now contain gluten. So I highly recommend, for the most part, as parents, you do your own meals. You really try as best as you can. I started this journey it's now 22 years ago. Gluten-free was so difficult to do. Casein-free was so difficult to do. Now it's so much easier. And it was almost very expensive too. But the point here is that you want a healthy individual. If you're not feeling good because you ate, you have a headache, you can't sleep, your gut is messy, you want to be healthy enough for you to get therapy, support, services. And if you're not feeling good, you're not. So we invested as a family that we will eat well and eat right. And that's really why we went on this diet. So how do you evaluate if this is helpful or not? Try it for a few months. I tell people that you may not tell the teacher and see what they say. They're like, oh, have you noticed anything? Because you don't want what we call the placebo effect, where you're just like, oh, they know they're on it, so they're looking for that expectation as that. But if you start to notice, like, wow, in the last 2 weeks, I've noticed that, wow, there's a change. That tells you. Sometimes it's just the sleep, some things that they're able to do more, So after the test, then you can say, you know what? This is what we tried, and now we're doing it in combination. I also want to say that back then, 20 something years ago, when we first used to tell people that this diet is what some parents may consider, people are like, oh my God, that's terrible. Don't do it. And I'm just like, what is the harm in trying to see if a food that I'm eating hurts my body or not? It is no harm to it, because at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that the individual is healthy and can attend. I will segue and talk a little bit about nutritional supplements because some parents spend a lot of money on it. And the reason for that is because the food that the child is eating is restrictive. They're not getting any nutrients. They're only eating French fries. That's all your child want to eat. Maybe your child only want to see white rice. There's nothing else they want to eat. So you're thinking, how are they going to get their vitamins in? How are they going to get their minerals in? So you might need to do nutrition. That's why we're supposed to even take multivitamin a day. If you're eating well, then it's not a big deal. But if you're not eating well, then you definitely need it because you need it to attend, right? So we know medications and some of these supplements will affect weight, appetite, nutrients absorption, and sleep. So we want to just basically make sure we get in there. So why are the nutritional supplements important? Because your vitamins and minerals are important to restore back balance to an imbalanced system, So they help with sleep. Melatonin, important. They help with the digestive issues, your poor nutrition, your leaky gut. They help with the immune system when there's an immune system dysfunctionality. And then they also help with some of the aggression, hyperactivity. So, your magnesium helps to calm them down. You can sleep, you know. What I will say is that the doctors can draw blood and look for nutritional deficiencies. When a child has pica, a lot of times it could be due to iron deficiency or even zinc deficiency because they're not getting it in the food. So if they're now eating inedible objects, it's because these things are not there and they need to make sure it's getting in some way. So it's really, really, really important that there's a complete workup. If a doctor is diagnosing that child with a disorder or an issue, we need to look at a corresponding complete metabolic evaluation, including even looking for your thyroid function test. We're finding that some individuals may have, hypothyroidism or low thyroid function, and that's the reason why they're having challenges. And so some of these things are all important, and all these things are all related, right? So it's important. So some of the key supplements that I'll just throw in here as a slide is magnesium. I talked about that. It helps with sleep, attention, irritability. Sometimes you can use Epsom salts, take the tablet, magnesium creams, but vitamin. If you do multivitamin, make sure it's free of dyes. With omega oils, you want omega 3s and omega 6 because it helps with inflammation, it helps with brain function, it helps with that hyperactivity. And that's why now the a lot of the vitamins and minerals that in pregnancy pregnant women take is fortified with omegas, right? Because it helps with brain the neuronal activity. We also want probiotics. Probiotics are non-dairy based. They help restore gut functions, especially with leaky gut. So leaky gut basically means the foods are not metabolized completely and it leaks up into the brain and then it forms what I'll use the gluten and casein free. I didn't get into the science too much on that. Is that we know that it causes when the gut could not completely digest your gluten and casein, it converts into a form called gluteomorphine and casomorphine, which is you hear the word morphine in there. It makes the child spacey and they can't focus and so on and so forth. And that's because the gut is leaky and the food particles kind of seeps through the gut walls and then it ends up in the brain and that's what happens. So we know that some of these things you definitely want probiotics and it helps to get rid of toxins. I also even say to women who have like yeast infection, recurring yeast infection or UTIs, take your probiotics seriously, or even yogurt, because it does help you to kind of restore function. The other key supplements to consider is melatonin. We definitely want to make sure. Have you noticed that if you travel and go overseas or go somewhere and you come back, sometimes your sleep is off, and when you take melatonin, it helps to restore. So we know melatonin helps. We also want antioxidants. Your vitamin C, E, A, and D, really, really, really important. It helps with, and some of our children that get colds easily really restore. Vitamin C has been shown to really help with stereotypical behaviors, like the stimming. We know vitamin B6, vitamin B12, folinic acid, which is leucovorin. That's why a lot of you guys have heard of the leucovorin thing. It basically helps with the absorption of the B12 and B6 and is really, really important. Vitamin B6 is given with magnesium, helps with behaviors such as communication, and then hyperactivity and zinc. So there's certain key vitamins that I think is really important. If the child is eating well, you will not need supplements. But if the child is not eating, then these are going to be some of the key ones that we need to take. And like I said, you definitely want it free of dyes. And so certain types of vitamins are more important than others. And then if I was to do a whole different talk, we want to talk about the reduced form of it. So, like a methyl B12 versus versus B12 itself, because it needs to be converted into and through the methylation pathway. So that's higher topic that we can go into right now. But there's a key vitamins and minerals that you definitely want. We want to definitely improve the function of the gut. I can't say that enough because for some of our children who are nonverbal or who struggle and can't tell you that they're not feeling good gut-wise, it's really important that we improve the GI issues that they have. So that I'm going to highlight again the probiotics. You want to mix a good flora because it improves the overall function of the immune system. And it does help to get rid of toxins that are coming through food. So there's certain recommendations. I used to be a big fan of Kirkman Labs. They have they have a brand that was called Probio Gold. I also believe in Saccharomyces boulardii, Forrestal, because it really, really, really helps with some of these kids. You'll see better bowel habits. If you're on an antibiotic and your doctor is giving you an antibiotic, and I'll use Augmentin as an example, it will cause dysbiosis. It would disrupt the GI tract. So you definitely need to be on probiotics. So definitely go to talk to your doctor about that so that this way you're not developing diarrhea and all these issues that may happen. And your bowel movement should be 1 to 3 times a day. If it's not happening and it's not formed like a banana or a shape of, because it has the stool needs to form the shape of the gut, right? So if it's coming out, it should look like that. If it's not and it's looking something else, you really need to do that. So there's probiotics. I'm a big fan of probiotics. You can get in the form of yogurt as well too. So really important. Also want to encourage modifying eating habits and food choices. We want the kids to avoid caffeine and sugar. It's irritant. Very salty food, irritant. Read labels on the food store-bought foods and avoid the additives. So the coloring and flavoring and preservatives can really be an issue. So really keep it simple. And I think that's really, really, really my key message is that we want to minimize the processed foods for the most part. And if you can get foods that are in a natural form, so we always want whole foods versus frozen foods versus the processed foods. I talked about juicing earlier. Really, what we got, one of the best gifts I bought for ourselves, this is 20 something years ago, was getting a really good blender. The blender that can blend meat and make it into liquid. And that's what we did. And we liquefied everything. And so we put in broccoli, spinach, we put in the pear, and just made sure that we gave that food in that form to my son, and that healed his gut. So we did two things that helped. We went gluten-free, casein-free diet, and we also started juicing. And those two things really, really, really provided health. No longer having to worry about putting him on antibiotics, no more ear infections, no GI issues, going regular, all that stuff. Really, really, really helpful. So if you have a child, not even diagnosed with any disorder, but you're noticing that they're having gastrointestinal issues, you really need to consider changing the diet, removing some of the gluten stuff. We are starting to see, I had a friend that was telling me that all of a sudden she became iron deficient. She needed to go on iron infusion. And somebody suggested, hey, why don't you test to see if you have any gluten sensitivity? She tested it. That was her issue. She took away the gluten. Now no longer needing iron infusion any longer. So, and it's an adult. It was a parent. So I was like, wow. So you could be fine, but then all of a sudden you develop this sensitivity or intolerance. And then that means that you pay attention. So this is why people need to do like elimination diet to really do that. So we also want to talk about healing the gut. So really, really important. I would highlight the importance of antioxidants. And, that's what antioxidants also help with what they call anti-inflammatory diets. So any diets that have loads of vitamin C, cod liver oil, those are all important. Oil of oregano, zinc, garlic. I end up using, like when I season my foods, I don't really buy any of the a lot of the seasoning that people do. I just blend like garlic, onion, and ginger, and I make it into that's my seasoning pretty much for everything, every food that I prepare. And it's delicious. And I just use, sea salt. I don't even just use any of all these other fancy stuff any longer. And it made a big difference. So as I'm starting to round up, what I would say this is that we need to give or to get out of what we need to give or to get out of our children. Remove the sugars and the junk food and germs and toxins. Consider maybe the diet if you are seeing that especially there's getting this kind of gastrointestinal distress for a period and see if that makes it an improvement or not. Probiotics, I talked a lot about that. I didn't get into the essential fatty acids, but an anti-glutamate. I am a big no MSGs because MSG has been shown to really, really, really get to some of the children very hyperactive. So look at the food labels and really remove it. And then, like I talked about, the anti-inflammatories. So really important. So I am all about not eliminating foods for people, but promoting a healthy diet. Whole foods, unprocessed, organic, fermented, rich in probiotics, grass-fed rather, pastured meat, eggs, good fat, and free of food intolerances, right? So quality is all about quality. It's all about quality, and it's all about quality. So my take-home message is this. We want a family-friendly nutrition because it wins. But before you subtract any food out of the child's diet, think about adding. So you want to add fruits, you want to add protein, you want to add water. You want to keep meals predictable, right? And your child can understand. Explain to them that we're going to look at how the food is affecting you. And we make some adjustment because we need to make sure you're okay. We want to offer balanced snacks, model eating, but don't force it. And then celebrate small wins because it's small. I started with to get him to just drink water, I started diluting the drink. So I moved from orange juice was irritating to the gut. So I moved from orange juice to pear juice, for example. And then I started diluting it to the point where it was more like water than anything. Now we do iced tea and things like that, but um, lots of water to try to get to the place where it's just really more or less water. And you definitely want to consult the nutritionist, right? So I want to make this recommendation, one change at a time rule. So as you're listening to me make go on and on and on, what is the one thing you're going to do from this talk? Tell yourself what's one thing. And if you're in a Zoom room, I want you to type that in and I'll see that comment in a minute. Add protein to breakfast if you're not doing that right now. Swap one sugary drink for water. Add one fruit daily, right? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, if you've heard that. Add one balanced snack, and small steps will equal sustainable change. So we are what we eat because what we're eating has effect on the body. And as parents, as caregivers, as even whether you're a health professional, whatever you are, you just need to look at what is happening to my body right now in this season. And as some of us, as we get older, we're now having to definitely pay attention to how much food we are, what kind of food we're eating, and what's on our plate, right? I actually personally consulted a nutritionist recently just to say, okay, what am I eating and how is that impacting my mood swings, if any? I don't have mood swings unless my husband tells me otherwise. So reflection, and I want you to write these questions down. What food seems to help my child feel better? What food challenge feels hardest right now? And then what is one realistic step I can try this week? What food makes them feel better? What's in it? What is hardest right now? We started off with just French fries and pretzels. That's all we were eating. Now we literally could eat a lot of things. The texture is still an issue on some things, but at least we eat the protein. I don't have to hide it and blend it up anymore on the vegetables because as the gut got healed, the desire to eat, the taste bud got better, and so many things happened from that. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found this instructive. I hope you found this beneficial. Um, and if it is, it's hard. I know one parent's like, I know it's hard. It may be hard, but it's worth you just keep trying to try for a season and then you can pause and then try it again and you could pause. So we would love to get some feedbacks from you. We'll send you our post eval back to you. For those who are in there, we'll share a slide. We'll share the slides with you if you want it, just so that you have a tool to also and talk to your parents, other parents about. And that's all she wrote from me. If there's no questions or comments, I know somebody says they're gonna add more protein to their diet. What else will people try so that they have a healthy body? All right, so we'll okay, somebody says, yeah, thank you. Oh, well, I'm glad that this was helpful. So at this time, I'm going to invite Nife, if you want to tell us what's upcoming for my goal in the next few weeks and months.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope we all had a great weekend. And happy Super Bowl Day. So first of all, on coming up on Saturday, we have our second winter swim meetup of the year. Um, We just want everybody to come out so you can scan the QR code to register. It's a really good way to make friends and meet new people because we have a lot of new people coming out. So it's really good to just build up your community, build up people that your kids can hang out with. So it's a good time. I do want to note again, the pool is heated, so you're not gonna be freezing cold, I promise. So it'll be in Parlin, New Jersey, and again, you can scan the QR code if you would like to register for the one coming up on Saturday or ones in the future, because we will have one in March and April. And then we have Empowerment Moment, of course, with Dr. G, happening Thursday, February 26th at 7 p.m. over Zoom. So you can just register for that at the same link that we use for Ask the Expert. So yeah, we're excited to see you there. Always a good time to be encouraged. And then we have Social Hour Live happening February 28th. So that will be in person. That is an in-person event. It will be in Edison, New Jersey. If you can register, it'll be at that link there. The link is also on our email, the emails that we send out. It's also on our Eventbrite. So I did want to do a quick plug for Eventbrite. If you follow us on Eventbrite, you will get notifications for every single event that we put on. So yeah, quick plug. But yeah, Social Hour Live in person. Join us for breakfast. You'll be able to talk to other caregivers and disconnect. This is another opportunity to connect with new people, even people that have been in the community for a long time that you maybe didn't talk to before. It's just a good time. And then we have, of course, our grant program, which opened on February 1st. We were very excited about that. So we've had a bunch of applications so far. If you know anybody that's interested in applying, you know somebody that it would be good for, especially if they live in New Jersey, you can send out the link to them. You can take a picture of this and just send it to them. It has all of the information that they'll need about what they'll need to submit and everything. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, email us at info@mygoalinc.org. I respond very quickly. And then lastly, round of applause. We have our bowl-a-thon coming up. So we told everyone to save the date, but now we have our official information. Sunday, April 26th from 2 to 5, we will be in Piscataway at Circle Bowl and Entertainment, bowling for autism. It's going to be a really, really fun time. This time we have bowling and we also have a full arcade. So it's going to be so, so much fun. Like there's literally something for everybody. So we want you to come out, invite all of your friends, invite your families. Literally, let's pack the house and have a great time. And then, of course, let us know your thoughts and suggestions for future sessions. We always want to hear what you guys have to say, what you would like to see for the rest of 2026. So scan the QR code to fill out our quick form. It'll take you just a minute or two. And if you have any other questions, you can email us at info@mygoalinc.org.
Excellent. Thank you, Nife, for all the great upcoming points that are happening with my goal. We're very, very, very pleased to be able to offer all these tools and resources to parents. And she said, we exist to support families facing autism and other intellectual disabilities throughout their lifespan. And what we do is provide resources and we provide connections. So our goal is to get connected with each family member, so that at the end of the day, you're not walking this life journey alone and you're not isolated in any means because you matter. So thank you for coming alongside of us. And we also want to highlight that we're able to do the grant program because of all the generous sponsors and donors. And so if you're one of our supporters, we just want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for standing with our families. We love you and we appreciate you. And if you're listening to us and you love what we're doing, we definitely want to invite you to be a part of our family of supporters. mygoalinc.org/donate, mygoalinc.org/donate. We'll love for you to partner with us so as we continue to be a blessing. Our vision has always been to make this stuff as free and as affordable. So all our events and programming are free to our families, with the exception of the Bulletin, which is our fundraiser. And it's intended to make sure that our families have the support that they need. So we appreciate you and thank you for always being there with us. So on that note, we will be seeing you locally. If you're in New Jersey, we'll see you on Saturday. If not, we'll see you the following month, I mean the 28th. And then of course, we'll have a topic of conversation next month. Thank you for those who are always on a journey with us. We love you. Seeing our kids continue to grow, really, really, really important. And next month, we will have one of our, as the expert, Rebecca Zegas will be here. She's going to really, really, really impact us. So we're looking forward to a great conversation next month with Rebecca Zegas on March 8th. So stay tuned for more information about that. So once again, have a wonderful Super Bowl party. We moved our presentation earlier today because we wanted to make sure that you all have time to connect with family. So don't hang out alone. Friend, phone a friend. Go hang out with somebody. On that note, thank you so much for joining us and have a blessed evening or afternoon. Bye bye.